May 28th, here in Seoul, I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with North Korea's latest spy satellite launch. The North said Tuesday that its attempt to launch a new rocket carrying a military reconnaissance satellite on Monday night ended in failure. Seoul and Washington condemned the move for risking regional security. South Korea, Japan, and China will now fully restore and normalize their relations. Leaders from the three sides announced the agreement in a joint declaration during their first meeting in over 4 years on Monday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the airstrike that left dozens of displaced Palestinians dead in Rafah was a tragic mistake. The White House is assessing whether Israel crossed a red line with its Rafah airstrike. Just hours after the leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China held a trilateral summit in Seoul, North Korea's attempt to put what would have been its second spy satellite into orbit resulted in failure. The North was quick to admit that the rocket exploded. Our Peunji starts us off.
This is the moment when a suspected military reconnaissance satellite launched by North Korea exploded mid-air. The video released by the South Korean military was filmed by surveillance equipment on a military patrol vessel deployed to waters northwest of the country. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said it detected the launch fired over the West Sea at about 10:44 p.m. on Monday night. But 2 minutes after the launch, it exploded into multiple pieces of debris above North Korean waters. The military said intelligence authorities of Seoul and Washington are currently conducting a detailed analysis of the launch, and that South Korea, the U.S., and Japan activated a missile warning system by deploying Aegis destroyers to designated areas in advance. North Korea also admitted that its attempt to launch a new military reconnaissance satellite failed when a newly developed rocket engine exploded in midair during the first stage of flight. Citing its Deputy Director General of National Aerospace Technology Administration, the regime's state media said initial analysis showed this was due to a newly developed liquid fuel rocket motor, but other possible causes are being investigated. The attempt came just hours after Pyongyang issued a warning on Monday, saying that it would try to launch a satellite by June 4th, which would have been its second spy satellite in orbit. The Japanese government earlier issued an emergency warning for residents in the south to take cover from the possible threat, before lifting the warning, saying the rocket was not expected to fly over Japanese territory. But the Japanese Defense Minister Minoru Kihara said they would continue to work on monitoring signs of threats and analyzing information, as the North may attempt another launch within the notified period. Peunji, Arirang News.
And Seoul immediately slammed Pyongyang for putting the peninsula at risk. Washington also called out on the North, saying the launch defies multiple UN Security Council resolutions. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
South Korea and the United States have both heavily criticized North Korea's attempt to put another spy satellite into orbit. During a meeting led by the director of the National Security Office, Jang Ho-jin, on Monday night, the launch was condemned as a violation of UN Security Council resolutions, regardless of whether it failed or not. During the meeting, attendees also called the launch an act of provocation that threatened peace and security on the Korean Peninsula, Northeast Asia, and the international community. The presidential office said that South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff detected the launch of North Korea's so-called military reconnaissance satellite at 10:44 p.m. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said in a statement on Monday local time that it condemns the launch as clear violation of several UN Security Council resolutions. The statement also said that the launch involved technologies directly related to North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missile program, and that the U.S.'s defense commitments to South Korea and Japan remain ironclad. Meanwhile, Japan's defense minister Minoru Kihara called the launch a serious challenge to the entire world. North Korea's state media announced that the launch of the satellite carrier rocket failed when it exploded in mid-air during the first stage flight soon after liftoff due to a suspected engine problem. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China Monday made an agreement to bring their relations back to normal, meaning their trilateral cooperation will now be broadened across numerous areas. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
Fully restoring and normalizing relations. was a key goal for this 9th Trilateral Summit between South Korea, Japan, and China, which resumed after 4 years and 5 months. And on Monday, President Yoon, as the host of the summit, says it did just that.
오늘을 기점으로 3국 정상회의는 정상화되었고 올해로 25주년을 맞이한 한일 중 협력 체제가 앞으로 더욱 성장해 나갈 수 있는 발판이 마련되었습니다.
They also acknowledged that they share some of the key issues such as aging demographics and supply chain disruptions, and by working together they can resolve them.
Since the last trilateral summits, the international community has faced diverse, complex and interconnected problems. Additionally, there are significant common issues among our three countries, such as low birth rates and aging populations.
We agree that in the face of new challenges and opportunities, South Korea-China-Japan cooperation must demonstrate new responsibilities and actions.
The summit comes after months of efforts by South Korea to make it happen. And President Yoon, on top of normalization of the relations, has emphasized tangible results for the citizens. In fact, the joint declaration the three adopted laid out the resumption of many dialogues between the three parties on top of specific actions they will take going forward. There were 6 main parts: civilian exchanges, climate change, the economy, public health, science, and disaster relief. Some tangible results were announced through the declaration. For the people-to-people exchange, the three will designate 2025 to 2026 as the year of cultural exchange among the three countries. For climate change response, they will collaborate with Mongolia to reduce dust and sandstorms in East Asia. And in terms of the economic and trade aspect, they will continue discussions to speed up trilateral FTA negotiations. In terms of public health and aging societies, the three will tackle future infectious diseases, and they adopted a separate joint statement on this. For science and tech cooperation, the three will resume the Trilateral Science and Technology Ministers meeting.
이번 회의에서 채택된 공동 선언은 우리 3국이 민생 증진과 영내 평화와 번영을 위해 긴밀히 협력하겠다는 의지를 담고 있습니다.
Next up as the host is Japan, and the leaders agreed that they look forward to the 10th summit without notifying when it will take place. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Monday's Trilateral Summit also set the tone for tightening economic cooperation. At a separate business summit, the leaders and business heads couldn't agree more on further expanding trade partnerships. Our Moon Hae-yeon has the details.
As neighboring countries, South Korea, Japan, and China's economies are closely linked, celebrating 25 years of trilateral cooperation this year. At the 8th edition of a business summit on Monday afternoon in Seoul, the leaders and 240 business heads came together to discuss a wide range of regional topics. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida remarked on the common challenges the countries face, such as aging populations, while Chinese Premier Li Qiang spoke of deepening industrial cooperation as Beijing looks to stabilize its supply chain network. President Yoon commented on the need for the neighbors to respond to global issues together, as well as further developing trade agreements.
3국 간 교역 투자 플랫폼인 RCEP의 활용도를 높이는 동시에 2019년 이후 중단된 한일 중 FTA 협상을 조속히 재개하여 경제 협력 기반을 업그레이드해야 합니다.
Accounting for nearly a quarter of the world's GDP, the three countries have attempted to facilitate easier trading in the past. Negotiations on a free trade agreement began in 2012, with 16 rounds of talks since then. FTAs abolished tariffs and barriers, but progress on a trilateral agreement has been slow for a variety of reasons. The last negotiations were in 2019, and factors including COVID-19 and Beijing-Washington tensions have hindered progress. Other economic partnerships, such as the China-led CPTPP and Japan-led RCEP, have also diverted attention away from the trilateral FTA. However, economic relations between Seoul and Tokyo have improved, with resumed finance leader talks last year ending a 7-year hiatus. But Japan falls behind the likes of the United States and China when it comes to South Korea's exports, and an expert explains why FTA negotiations between the two have been slow, and what Seoul is attempting to achieve through a free trade agreement with Tokyo.
Even though Korean products are pretty good and less expensive, they are sticking to their own product. So main target of Korean, government and Korean corporations are, penetrating into Japanese market.
As for trade relations with China, it was formerly the country's biggest destination for exports before the US took over. Data from the Bank of Korea show that the value of outbound shipments to the US overtook those to China for the first time in 21 years in the first quarter of this year. But the Sino-Korean FTA that was set in motion to cover goods trade could now be expanded to the services sector to include tourism and culture.
The expansion of free trade agreements in other areas like services and investment, and the interaction of people that are most important, and that is in the traditional kind of interest of free trade agreements. So I think it is a necessary and a natural process of development.
With these negotiations between Seoul and Beijing scheduled for next month, and Yoon's urging to resume FTA talks, attempts to strengthen economic ties are definitely underway. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Seoul's foreign ministry announced Tuesday that it has revamped its units to bolster regional strategies and intelligence gathering, while downsizing the department handling North Korean nuclear issues. Tentatively called the Office of Strategy and Intelligence, it has 4 units under its wing: strategy and policy planning, diplomatic intelligence, the Korean Peninsula policy, and international security bureaus. The ministry said the move is to realize the government's vision of becoming a global pivotal state and respond more strategically to the complex challenges globally. The Foreign Ministry in March announced the reorganization plan, citing the changing diplomatic and geopolitical landscape, including the deadlock in nuclear talks with the North. President Yoon continues on with his summit diplomacy. UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan is paying a 2-day state visit to South Korea from today. For more, we're joined by Lee Soo-jin this morning. Welcome.
Welcome. Hi, good morning.
Thanks for joining us. This is the first such a visit to the country by a UAE leader. The question is, what took so long for such a visit to happen?
This state visit is highly anticipated. It was supported to happen last October, but due to the regional issues, Hamas and Israel-Gaza war caused an uncertainty in the Middle East, and the UAE announced a postponement of the state visit to Korea.
Right, and Seoul's top office says it'll do its best to host the UAE leader with, all respect. What does that say about South Korea-UAE relations?
Last year, President Yoon and the First Lady visited the UAE, and they were greeted by the UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, including air shows, and 20 minutes of the official welcoming ceremony was held at the Qasr Al Watan Palace. And it matches a typical high-level state visit protocols, and this reflects the importance of the relationship between the country. And President Yoon received an honor guard welcome on a trip to a United Arab Emirates and was greeted by the Emirates leader Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. An honor guard of traditionally dressed Emirates greeted President Yoon and the First Lady, and they toured life ropes alongside troops on the camelbacks. And inside the palace, a military band played a Korean and Emirates national anthems. So to the Korean government, the UAE is an important partner, as well as we are all aware. And former President Moon Jae-in and Park Geun-hye visited the UAE twice during their term. And in particular, the UAE became the first Middle Eastern country to upgrade its relationship with Korea. to a special strategic partnership. This shows the importance of the United Arab Emirates to Korea, and Korea also relies on the Emirates for just like under 10% of its crude oil supply, and trade with the UAE is into the billions of dollars worth of cars, materials, and other goods. So the government officials' remarks recognize the importance of the UAE as an economic cooperation partner, and it is expected that the government will prepare a level of greeting ceremony similar to that of his visit to the UAE.
Definitely. You mentioned this. President Yoon made his visit to the UAE back in January last year. And there he secured UAE's promise to invest $30 billion in South Korea's nuclear power, arms, and energy sectors. Should we expect a similar deal to come out this time?
Hopefully, yes. Korea already reached a $3.5 billion with the UAE in the 2022 to sell an advanced air defense system. And Korea also has the biggest project, which is a Baraka nuclear power plant, the first attempt to build atomic reactors abroad. Also, during last year's visit, the UAE pledged $30 billion in investments. So not only nuclear power and arms cooperation for investment, but there is also a huge room for cooperation with the Korean government and the UAE. Currently, Emirates plans to go to carbon neutral by 2050. So renewable energy and high-tech sectors, including other parts, are expected to invested by the UAE.
Well, what's notable is that Seoul's presidential office also said the summit will draw out, tangible outcomes that people in both countries can actually feel. Now, what could they be?
It is expected that the tangible results will be felt in the economic sector for the most part. And as seen in the examples of France and the UK cooperation with the UAE, the UK is focusing on the bio industry and its infrastructure, and while France is concentrating on the semiconductor and the space industry. However, extensive investment are being made across a wide range of areas, so it can be anticipated that the investment will not be limited by the size of the companies, and ranging from startups and ventures companies to small and medium-sized enterprise and the large corporation. And I believe that continuous economic cooperation can be achieved through the sustained government interest and partnership management. And also, of course, in addition to traditional economic sector, culture industry cooperation can also be considered. And given the Korean wave and the popularity of Korean culture in the Middle East and the UAE, it is very predicted that through cooperation in the sector, tangible results that the public can directly experience will emerge in the future.
Indeed. All right. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having me, Dami. Have a good day.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Monday that the airstrike that killed dozens of displaced Palestinians in Rafah was a tragic mistake. The White House says it's assessing if Israel crossed the red line with its Rafah airstrike. Lee Seung-ja has more.
At least 45 people were killed and more than 200 others injured after an Israeli airstrike at a refugee camp in Rafah. In response to the casualties, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the strike a tragic mistake.
In Rafah, we already evacuated about 1 million non-combatant residents, and despite our utmost effort not to harm non-combatants, something unfortunately went tragically wrong. We are investigating the incident and will reach conclusions because this is our policy.
Netanyahu added that while every non-combatant that is hurt is a tragedy, for Hamas, it's a strategy. According to the Gaza Health Ministry and Palestinian medics, most of the casualties were women and children. Washington has long warned Israel to make sure there are limited civilian casualties in Rafah. But with dozens killed in the recent airstrike, the White House is now assessing whether Israel has crossed the line. U.S. officials speaking to media outlet Axios said that the Biden administration is assessing if the airstrike is a violation of what President Biden called a red line, adding that a humanitarian crisis due to the mass displacement of civilians from Rafah could also constitute a violation. Meanwhile, the EU has decided to resume its mission to directly manage and monitor the Rafah border crossing for the first time in 17 years. Joseph Borrell, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security, announced Monday that an agreement was reached on the revival of the EU Border Assistance Mission at a meeting of foreign ministers of the 27 EU countries held in Brussels. The mission was first organized in 2005 by the EU to be dispatched to border areas marred in conflict to monitor, control, and manage the flow of people and goods as a neutral third party. It was dispatched to the Rafah checkpoint, but their activities were temporarily suspended after about 2 years when Hamas took complete control of the Gaza Strip in June 2007. 이승재, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Seong, and now we turn off to stories from around the world. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis announced on Monday that they successfully launched aerial attacks against 3 ships in the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea, as well as on 2 U.S. destroyers in the Red Sea. Via televised speech, Houthis military spokesperson Yahya Sari named the attack ships as American Largo Desert in the Indian Ocean, the Israeli ship MSC Mishela in the Indian Ocean, and the Minerva Lisa in the Red Sea. Sari did not name the 2 U.S. destroyers, and none of the ships have confirmed any damage. Sari added that the attacks are to support the oppressed Palestinian people until the aggression is stopped and the siege on the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip is lifted. The Houthis have carried out multiple aerial attacks against international ships in the Red Sea and Indian Ocean region since last November. Russia will build a small nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan, a first in post-Soviet Central Asia. That's according to Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev at a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday. Putin, who is on his 3rd foreign trip since his re-election, said Russia would put $400 million into a joint investment of $500 million to finance the nuclear projects in Uzbekistan. The Kremlin said Russia's Rosatom will build up to 6 nuclear reactors with a capacity of up to 55 megawatts. Although Uzbekistan and its neighbor Kazakhstan are both producers of uranium, the Uzbek project will be the first of the 5 ex-Soviet Central Asian countries to construct nuclear power plants. Moving over to South Asia, where at least 16 people had been killed as of Monday as Cyclone Remal crashed into coastal parts of India and southern Bangladesh. Bangladeshi Minister for Disaster Management Mohibur Rahman said that at least 10 died in the country's southwestern port area of Mongla and that 3.75 million people had been affected. In India's West Bengal, a senior official from the state government confirmed that at least 6 civilians had died, including 3 by electrocution. Cyclone Remal made landfall on Sunday with gales of up to 110 kilometers per hour, accompanied by tidal surges and torrential rain. Authorities said some 8.4 million people live in the cyclone's path. A 60-year-old Argentinian woman challenged the youth-obsessed norms of beauty, competed in the annual Miss Universe contest's regional stage in Argentina. Alejandra Maria Marisa Rodriguez, a legal advisor for a hospital in La Plata, south of the capital Buenos Aires, came short of winning the Miss Argentina crown at the competition on Saturday, but won Best Face. Rodriguez's inclusion attracted the attention of the world's media as it came in the first year since the Miss Universe beauty pageant scrapped its long-standing age limit. The contest, which began in 1952, only allowed women between the ages of 18 and 28 to compete until last year.
Good morning. Many seem to enjoy yesterday's wonderful weather throughout the day, and we are expecting hotter conditions for western parts of the country, but the East Coast will notice a big drop in highs, hovering around 20 degrees Celsius this afternoon, along with that easterly winds. And there will also be spotty rain for parts of the East Coast and passing rain for inland regions of 전라남도 and 경상남도 province. Meanwhile, tons of sunshine is in the forecast for the rest of the country. UV rays will be high to very high in many parts of the country with a strong breeze. And Seoul gets up to 26 degrees, Gwangju at 27, Daegu, Busan will be topping out at 25 degrees. Air quality will be decent nationwide. Then we're looking at a week of sunny skies and warm temperatures. Take advantage of the weather before it gets too warm. Weather experts are predicting a scorching summer this year. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.